Hey there, it's Chicago Slim, aka Dr. Dan, the Blues Doctor. You're hanging out with Talking Blues, and we are rocking and rolling for some fun today. Hey, stay tuned.
I just remembered that you have a radio background. So, let's start from the very beginning. No, let's talk about your dogs. You have 6 dogs. What kind of dogs do you have?
So I'm a dog lover. My wife and I are dog lovers. So we each have dogs that reflect us. So I like smart dogs. I like dogs that I can talk to. And my dog is a standard poodle, and his name is Holmes, named after Groove Holmes, the organ player. And when I play guitar in the house, he sings.
So the 5 others are your wife's dogs?
Well, my wife has a Yorkie. Our daughters got a Labradoodle that they abandoned, so we had to adopt that one. And then our other daughter is here, moved in with us, looking to buy a house nearby. So she brought her 3 Bernedoodles, Bernese water dogs, and poodles mix. So 6 huge dogs and a little Yorkie. And I can tell you that that's a lot of crap to clean up every day.
And a lot of walking, I would imagine.
Yeah, they're awesome. They are pretty self-contained. They play in the yard, and they do like to go for walks. They're extremely gentle, but they're huge. I mean, I'm 6'11", and one of the dogs is named Blue. And when he stands on his hind legs and puts his paws on me, we're looking eye to eye.
Wow. 6'11", and I understand that your first love was basketball.
Oh yeah, I got a basketball Jones for sure.
So tell me about that, because I presume that it was quite serious.
Oh, very serious. Well, I'm an immigrant. My family immigrated here from the former Yugoslavia. My dad was an Olympic rower for their 1960 team in Rome. And so he was always very athletic. And my mom, too, my dad's about 6'5". My mom is 5'11", and she's also quite the athlete. And when we immigrated to Chicago, it's always difficult to fit in, even though I didn't have an accent. I mean, I spoke English, I spoke 3 languages, but I had this funny last name, Ivankovich, that nobody really knew where that was from or what it was. And we always looked for ways to fit in. And sports was something that I just sort of fell into and was really good at, and got to the point where I had hundreds of college scholarships offered. And I was a high school All-State and All-American player. And unfortunately, being so young, I was actually about 2 years younger than everyone in my class, because I had been advanced early for academics. And even though I was tall, I was big, I don't think my body was quite at the level of maturity playing with a lot of the guys. So it wore down from all the playing, and I got injured. It was a career-ending injury, and that was the end of that.
At 6'11", and also being an All-State, did you think that being a pro basketball player was a possibility?
It's different than today, just because there's a lot of very tall people right now. Seems like back then, being 6'11", there weren't that many. And that was, I couldn't tell people I wanted to play badminton or water polo. I was sort of, you're going to play basketball and you're going to go pro. That was sort of the pathway. I didn't really decide yay or nay. That's just what I was supposed to do because I was 6'11".
So it must have been devastating to have that injury and realize that your dream of pursuing basketball was no longer.
Oh, absolutely. You're 17 years old, and everything that you've been told you're supposed to do was suddenly, it wasn't like it happened over a period, it just overnight, blink of an eye, it was gone. So that was a pretty pretty intense and pretty emotional thing to have that be understood, that that's something that's not in the cards anymore for you.
This eventually led you to pick up the guitar, or were you playing the guitar before then?
I desired to play the guitar. What I actually played was violin. By the time I was injured, I already had 12 years of violin, orchestra, piano, music theory, and the girls that were going to the rock and roll shows were way hotter than the girls in the orchestra. So I was pretty committed to learn guitar, but I never played guitar.
How easy was that transition? Because they're two very different instruments with different approaches.
Absolutely. So for me, I learned how to play guitar by basically taking my violin music and just sort of repurposing it to different staff, and just playing Bach violin concertos on guitar. So I was learning where the notes were. I was playing the scales. I was learning the passages, and I really didn't understand much about chords. I was just sort of learning how to play the notes. That came pretty intuitively. The chording was a lot more complicated because the voicings and playing chords, that was more based off piano. So the guitar I was interested in the violin part, which would be the right hand on the piano, the rhythm and the chordal part, which would be the left hand on the piano. That really didn't, a violin, classically didn't involve chords a lot. It was more about melody. So I learned guitar playing melody. And I guess I did it. I probably should have gone into heavy metal because I came right out basically soloing. No rhythm, soloing. I didn't have any pedals or amps, but I probably should have, because I came out into guitar straight as a soloist, and I had to learn how to play rhythm. That was trickier and actually the funnest part of guitar.
What kind of music were you playing at that point?
So at the time, I was in a lot of the solo work, the people that I really enjoyed. I had every one of Jascha Heifetz's records. I had box sets of Beethoven, Bach, Tchaikovsky. It was really, Firebird Suite, all the things that I was listening to at the time was classical. And then, like I said, the women were much hotter on the rock and roll side. So I said, how can I make violin rock and roll, which was very tough. So I did a lot of research when I was in high school. And I discovered people like Sugarcane Harris, Papa John Creech, and I actually was pretty good at I was a big Frank Zappa fan, and Jean-Luc Ponty was somebody who I really admired. He was a very gifted melodic player, and the fact that he played with Zappa made him cool to me. And so we had a group that did songs like Aurora and, just anything that I could do. But it was just not, a lot of the kind of crossover jazz fusion guys in the 70s and 80s, personality wise, didn't really gel with me. I get along with everybody, but from a mental headspace kind of thing, I tried even Charlie Daniels, Devil Went Down in Georgia, South's Gonna Do It Again. And it was cool, but guitar is far cooler. And I always dreamed of guitar. And I think when I got injured, that was the one thing that saved my life, because I went down a pretty deep pathway of depression being injured. And I needed to have something. I had all this free time, and guitar kind of became my lifeboat, my rescue,
So at 17, you're not too far away from deciding on your university path. And I presume sometime, I don't know if it has anything to do with your injury, but I presume you chose the path of being a doctor. How did that come about?
Well, when I was recruited, I actually accepted a scholarship to play basketball at Northwestern University in Evanston. That was the one place that I was accepted into both the electrical engineering, computer science, which had a dual degree program with the School of Music. And then I also got accepted into the what they call the HPME, the Honors Program in Medical Education. And I went down the path of going into the medical field. And it was a very crazy universe that led me to Northwestern, because originally I was committed to play basketball for Bob Knight at Indiana. And my mom shut that down kind of quickly. She said, absolutely not. And when there was a group decision with my parents and me to go to Northwestern, but I was kind of a little bit resistant to it because they didn't have as great of a team. But when I got injured, I tried to play. I couldn't really do it. And I found all these things at Northwestern that were amazing. I mean, the sports teams are great, but the medical school was incredible. And there were all these things that were in undergrad that I never even imagined. This whole universe got opened up to me when I got injured, and I had this vacuum of things that I could do now that I had time. And so in the undergrad universe, you wouldn't believe the people that I was exposed to and the things that I got to do that led me to the blues. It was like almost like some preordained, like crazy star alignment, because the person in the animal laboratories. So we had to do laboratory. We had physics lab, we had biology lab, we had different labs that involved, animals before it became politically incorrect to do that. But the guy that ran it was this older gentleman. And I was in the lab one night. I think I was playing some 8-track of Freddie King, and I was by myself and I was playing it pretty loud. And he walked in, he said, who's out here playing blues? I said, well, dude, I'm the only guy here, and it's my radio, it's me. And so I thought he was trying to make conversation, real sweet guy. He said, well, I own this club on the South Side. And I said, yeah, whatever, right? Sure. You own a club on the South Side. Tell me more. And he goes, you come by and you just bring your guitar, and we'll see you there. And I said, okay, you invited me to go to the South Side on a club down on 43rd Street. And you own this club, which I'm saying bullshit, right? I'm saying he's just making conversation and talking typical old man jive. And, but you know what, being naive, and I said, okay, I'm going. So I got my guitar on a Monday night. I went down to 43rd Street. I got a ride deep on the South Side on Martin Luther King Drive and 43rd Street. And I pull up to the club. The club's called the Checkerboard Lounge. And I said, man, there's no way that this guy is going to be here. I'm going to show up, and either they're going to steal my guitar, or they're going to beat the shit out of me, or they're going to do both. And I go to the door, and I was greeted by a couple of very nice security guards. And I just said, Mr. Thurman invited me here with my guitar tonight to jam night. He said, well, come on in. Mr. Thurman's right over there. And I'm like, wow, he's there. So I look over at the bar, and there's L.C. Thurman behind the bar pouring drinks. And there's only like 6 or 7 people around the bar. But it was Buddy Guy, it was Junior Wells, Magic Slim, Johnny Dollar, and Lefty Diz, and my future bandmate Killer Ray Allison. And all I could say was fuck me, excuse my French there, but I couldn't believe it. It was mind-blowing, crazy.
So at this point, I know you were listening to your Freddie King music, but how much were you into blues? Like, it sounded like you went from classical to more rock and maybe even jazz rock or whatever with Frank Zappa, but tell me how aware were you of blues at that point?
Well, what happened, so Northwestern has this incredible college radio station that's won numerous awards called WNUR. And when I got injured, the athletic department was trying to keep me sort of engaged and occupied doing something sports related. So they said, why don't you go down to WNUR and tell the manager you'd like to work on some of the broadcasts, for football, for basketball, and see what happens. And I went down there and introduced myself, and he said, yeah, okay, we'll get you plugged into that. But do you know anything about blues? Because I got an open blues show that needs someone to cover it. I'm like, oh yeah, man, I'm an expert. I know I didn't know a damn thing about it. It was when I was a freshman. And I said, he goes, well, would you do it Sunday night from 7 to midnight? Yeah, man, I got it. No problem. So I went to the first show. I didn't know a damn thing, but I'm a pretty quick study. And I was able to put together a 5-hour show. Got all the background, and they literally have thousands of records down there. So between the day he hired me and the show, I was down at the radio station reading every liner note, going to the library and checking out. So I became like, I got a master's degree in blues in about a week, getting ready for my show. And then every week it kind of built upon that. So I met L.C. Thurman probably about midway through my freshman year, when I had already been working down at the radio station. So my immersion in the blues was like pretty quick, pretty profound. And it was, like I said, it was a godsend, because I didn't know about the relevance of Chicago to the genre. I didn't know about the electrification of blues. I didn't know, how I knew the name Muddy Waters because I had seen him opening up and playing with Eric Clapton when I was in high school. But once again, I just thought, who's this guy, Muddy Waters? I knew the name, but as I delved and became more of a disciple of the genre, I developed a deeper understanding that I was literally in the epicenter, like where the bomb like exploded for the electrification of blues. And there were all these people and all these things that were like right there for me to participate in and to enjoy, like firsthand. I didn't have to read it in a book. I could live it. So it was a very quick descent down the rabbit hole of blues, and it was amazing.
When did you actually connect with it? I mean, was it through the playing, or was it through listening and doing the radio show?
Well, guitar was something I did to occupy my mind and my hands, and I knew I loved rock blues. Led Zeppelin, the Rolling Stones. I was a huge fan. Eric Clapton, Robin Trower, Jeff Beck. I knew all those guys, but I only read in interviews who they were. I'd read about Hubert Sumlin. I'm like, who the hell's Hubert Sumlin? And when I'd hear about Otis Rush, I'd hear about Buddy Guy, Magic Sam. They were just names to me. So as I got playing and I got to, meet these people, I mean, I met Magic Slim, and he allowed me to jam with him when I was learning. And it was just, it became like a very transcendental kind of a thing where these names now were being connected. They weren't mythical figures. Buddy Guy, Junior Wells. I mean, when you're there hanging out, drinking with them and playing with them, they're not these kind of illusions or delusions in your brain. They're actually palpable, tangible people that kind of became my mentors. They were my guides, my muses. I mean, L.C. Thurman was kind of the conduit that led me to all of them. But like I said, it just, as I became exposed to it, I just became more hungry to know more. And like the knowledge was literally, it wasn't in a book, it was right before me. These were people who were like legendary practitioners that were here in the city that nobody, and so I'd ask people, like, how come Buddy Guy's not playing like the amphitheater or this and that? And they'd be like, Buddy who? And I that was shocking to me, because I definitely understood their significance as I became more immersed in it. And so that just led me down the path that I said, I really want to study with them. I want to learn from them. I want to understand this musical form. And, it was like a never ending chapter. Like I had a subsection, I'd complete something, and then there'd be something new. I'd meet a different person. It never stopped. I mean, Chicago was that incredible with the clubs on the South and West Side. I could go every week and it was something new, a new soul food restaurant, a new musician to meet and hang out with. I had some incredible people that were my mentors. And the crazy thing was, none of them ever nobody, Eddie Taylor Sr., Magic Slim, they never charged me a dime to teach me. And they were just excited that people were interested in their music and in their story. And it was amazing. I feel honored there.
So on that Monday evening when you went for the jam session, and there you are sitting next to Junior Wells and Buddy Guy, how competent a guitar player were you at that point?
Um, well, I had been practicing, and I had I had kind of the Elmore James, the 3-chord, Elmore James and slide kind of thing. I had the On the One John Lee Hooker thing, but like a real, dominant 7th and 9, like a real blues, I had no clue. And so the first night, I don't know if I took my guitar out of the case the first night. I literally just pulled up a chair. I asked for a pen and paper, and I just started taking notes. I don't think it was probably until the 4th or 5th time that I went down there that I had I mean, they invited me up, and I'm like, no way. I'm not ready. I don't want to do this. I don't want to make a complete fool of myself. And kind of like with the radio show, I kind of assessed and surveyed what this was all about. And I realized that I wasn't ready. And I went and woodshedded. I went and practiced. I went and talked to people, jammed with them. And then when I finally had the opportunity to feel confident, then a few weeks down the line, I got up and I played in the jam, and it was amazing. But I mean, I was trying to make up for years because, these people had been doing it since they were kids, and they were 40, 50 years old. I was literally just, here I am. And I was a blank slate, just like a sponge, looking to absorb influence and knowledge and skill, technical. And so there were many Mondays that was like my laboratory, the checkerboard.
It's amazing to me, like you hear about blues jams, and I just did an interview a couple of days ago with somebody from Germany, and how he got into the blues and how he learned about the blues at a blues jam in a small town in Germany. But in your case, you go to a blues jam, and we're talking some heavy duty musicians just hanging out.
Oh my God. I mean, the thing about Junior Wells, I love that guy. The guy was out of his mind. I mean, he was an international superstar who literally was there every damn Monday. Him and Lefty Diz would be there, and they would literally be playing. They would be jamming. They would be playing. And, they weren't getting paid a lot, but they just did it for the love of they just loved it. And to be there and just be in their presence and kind of absorb not just the music, but their style. I mean, Junior coming in like an all purple monotone outfit, or left, I'm taking visual cues and making notes that these guys like are living that experience. I mean, this is not just something that they take off at the end of the gig. This is their deal. And so there was a lot of things about, look, I'm a musician, and I'm a producer, and I consider myself an interpreter of the genre. The way the rock blues guys are inspired by the music as much of the world has. There's something about being a quote unquote blues man that involves a 24/7, 365 kind of thing. I couldn't do that. That wasn't my existence. But geez, I was so influenced and inspired. There were things that rubbed off on me that I got. I mean, it's not just about the music. It's about the attitude. It's about the persona. Every one of those guys had like a personality and a persona that could fill up a room. And so playing blues music is one thing, being immersed in the blues is one thing, and living the blues, that's like another. And I got to observe them sort of in their element, where that was their laboratory. And it was amazing, truly an incredible. The jams were a reflection of not just the music, but the brotherhood, the camaraderie, the community. They created a community there. And it just, they never really got credit for that. once again, to the unknown outsider, like, yeah, a bunch of black guys in the ghetto doing whatever, getting drunk. But, I think to people who really understood it, and I think the Europeans were particularly tuned into this, they understood the power of it, was that, these little clubs, these little communities reflected like in a cultural immersion. And that was sort of where the rubber hit the road in those clubs. So the music, the food, I mean, look at the checkerboard. On a Saturday night, I'd be there. I'd be drunk off my ass, and I'd walk out the door and there'd be a woman making pig's ears to put on a sandwich. And when you're hungry and you're drunk, you are willing to eat a pig ear sandwich, man. I had 4 pig ears with mustard, and that was pretty damn good, actually. It was really good. But that's what I'm saying, is that it wasn't just the music. It was the whole deal was like right there. It wasn't a tourist attraction. It was like, that was it. That was the epicenter of the music. And once again, I just got to be touched by it in a way that was super meaningful to me, by people that I became great friends with, and very honored and thankful, because the experience shaped me every bit as much as the music did.
I wonder, it sounds like they were very accepting of you from the very beginning.
So I think it was because, and I may be wrong, Junior was just great. Junior and Lefty Diz, I did a lot of things with them, both in and out of the music side. They were just really boisterous, fun people. They accepted everybody. They were not, I never noticed them to be, they talked a lot of shit to me all the time, but it wasn't like mean. And then I talk shit back to them. I mean, at some point it was like a give and take. They're just those kind of people. It's like a give and take. They were nice and cool to everyone. But I think Magic Slim was very accepting to me because he was about 6'7". And I read later, and he told me how, when he first came to Chicago, he wasn't good enough. He came to Chicago to try and break in, and he went back down south. He's like, oh, I can't do this. So when he came up, he became Hound Dog Taylor's rhythm guitar player. And so I think he was always very nice to me. He called me Slim Junior. It's kind of how the name evolved. But I think he was probably aware that I was trying really hard and I was learning, and he would always, give me that little kick in the ass to try and encourage me. He was probably the reason that I was able to kind of make the leap and transcend to the point where I really felt comfortable playing on stage. He was probably the singular person. Junior was great. Like, I mean, Junior dragged me up. I didn't know what the hell key they were in, what the hell they were doing. He just kept like jumping around, screaming in the mic and going, woo, like, and I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. And it sounded really good at the end. Everyone's like, oh man, good job. I'm like, what the fuck did I just do? And Junior made everybody in the band sound that cool because he was like a meteor. All the attention was on him. You could have been playing in totally the wrong key. You could have been playing the wrong song, and it still would have come out cool because Junior was that amazing, But it was fun, man. I mean, you learn by fucking up, right? You learn by making mistakes, and it's not a mistake if you can resolve it properly, and it's not a mistake if you stop making the mistake. It's a learning process, and they were very patient with me learning. So like I said, the fact that they did it, I can't thank them enough. And back then I couldn't thank them enough. I felt so humbled that these guys actually were my friends, that I would always come to them and go, hey, is there anything that I can do for you? It's like, I mean, I come there and I'd buy a round or two of drinks, but then they'd buy me a round of drinks. And like, what can I do for you guys? This is like, you're saving my life. What can I offer you that you need? And what I discovered was they needed healthcare.
Let me just go back a little bit. At what point did you feel really comfortable being on stage after your initial trip to the Checkerboard Lounge? And then at the same time, what were your goals? Because you're obviously pursuing a medical career. I don't know how seriously you were thinking about a musical career. Or were you?
No, not at all. I wasn't thinking about a musical career. I wasn't thinking about a radio career. I just kind of went with the flow because, when I was playing basketball, I was putting in 6 to 8 hours a day in addition to going to school, doing homework and, living that life. So I had a big void. So for me to go and, jam and to go practice and to go be on the radio, that still took far less time than what basketball took. You kind of get, I'm not going to say the word brainwashed, but you get programmed into just understanding that this is your life. And when you're not doing it, you're painfully aware that you're not doing it. And all this time is not being filled. So, I would say that parallel paths were happening. Playing guitar continued to advance. And after about a year, I felt really comfortable, just getting up and doing whatever. I mean, I like Magic Slim was like a human jukebox. He knew hundreds of songs and I was just learning songs. I mean, learning his playlist, learning songs, and whatever Junior and Slim did, I mean, that was a lot of overlap. So I figured out the songs, I knew the names, I knew the changes. And after a while, you realize that they're pretty comparable, just maybe with a different rhythmic or turnaround. And, but likewise in radio, I had no clue in radio when I started. And after a year, I was becoming pretty proficient. I had record labels calling me, setting up interviews with their artists, asking me to submit my playlist to these magazines and stuff. So as I got into it, I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool. And I wouldn't mind doing this as a gig. This would be kind of cool. I mean, I didn't think that the reality would exist, but I did pursue it with a fervor and a passion in the same way that I would try to pursue my medical career. I was just very driven and committed because the alternative was having this huge hole in my life that almost just was devastating. So I did that to escape my loss, and it made me work that much harder. So I didn't drink. I didn't really, I drank when they gave me Wild Turkey. That was like the Magic Slim said I would not play well if I didn't drink Wild Turkey, and so did Lefty Diz. And I said, well, I'm drinking Wild Turkey, God damn it. But I didn't drink it outside of the club. I didn't smoke. I didn't do drugs. And so, the radio and music were parallel. And I got to the point where I got a couple of professional on-air slots at the commercial radio stations in Chicago, in addition to doing the college gig. And then I was getting called to, play more. And then, the opportunities as a musician just evolved until I connected with Otis Rush to play with him. And so when that happened, I'm like, wow, this is like some serious stuff for a dude that's only doing this as a hobby, right? I mean, maybe I could do this for a career. I don't know. But it got so serious that at some point in my medical training, I took a 6-year break to actually pursue radio and music full time.
Wow. Was that risky?
Well, what I did, so, the medical schools, it's kind of a weird thing. They do want you to be well-rounded. They want you to be relatable. They want you to connect with not just, one demographic of patients. If you're going to be a doctor, you got to be able to connect with all ethnicities, all demographics. You got to be a healer is kind of like being a great musician. You have to basically be approachable. You have to be able to connect with everyone within a few seconds. So I simply told them I'm really having a great time doing this music. It's rounding me out and giving me opportunities to sort of feed my passion as being a healer. And I'd like to ride this out and see where I can take it. And they said, well, you're going to have to come in every year and give us a report of what you're doing. And if you want to continue taking time off, we'll approve it based on what you're doing. But if you're sitting around at home watching TV and doing nothing, we're not going to accept that. So, I came in every year and I give a report saying, I played with this musician. I'm on the air at WCKG. I'm working at WNUR. I have a syndicated blues show. They thought it was great. Like every year, I think I was, I wasn't the only medical student taking time off. but I think I was their favorite because I had the most ridiculous stories of what I was doing. Like the other guys were coming, yeah, I'm doing a laboratory research project and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, I'm doing this. I'm playing here. We did gigs. I'm touring there. We did this recording. I'm on the air. And they just thought like, when I leave, I'm sure they were shaking their heads. And each year, my hair and my beard got longer. I think I had my beard down to almost my nipples, and I had a ponytail. And every time I would leave, I'd be like, they're just like going, wow, crazy. And then, so the year I was going to come back, they knew I was going to come back because I got a haircut and I shaved my beard. So, but that was 6 years later.
And what made you decide that you wanted to come back and reacquaint yourself with the medical field? And I guess the other question is, you are now a trauma and spine surgeon, correct?
Correct, yeah.
How did you decide on that specialty?
Well, when I was a basketball player, just like everyone was pushing me to be an NBA player because I was 6'11", everybody was pushing me to be a sports medicine doctor. And I thought, so now I'm injured, I got a clean slate, I'm re-entering medicine with an open mind. And having been in these very disparate areas of Chicago, the South Side, the West Side, a lot of poverty, a lot of discrimination in healthcare access. The blues opened my eyes to the fact that it's not a level playing field here. And as I came back to medicine, part of the thing of being a trauma surgeon was that a lot of these folks in these areas who are injured, they don't get good care. And I witnessed that with these celebrated blues musicians. Many of them didn't have doctors, they didn't have insurance. They go to Europe, play in front of 10, 15,000 people and come back and live in the projects, And so I spent, even though I wasn't a doctor yet, I spent a lot of time working with the blues musicians to make sure that, they never listened to me about quitting smoking, but I would identify that they needed a doctor. I would check their blood pressure. I'd check them out for diabetes and make sure that they got proper referral for care. And the trauma part just had to do with, I developed an interest in public health. And I think I was talking about the terminology of healthcare disparities long before it was called healthcare disparities. I mean, we understood in being in these communities that Black people don't have as good access to care. They don't live as long. They're not as healthy. I mean, it happened during COVID. Everyone's like, oh my God, Black people and brown people are dying at much, much higher rates due to COVID. I'm like, well, that's like a repetition of the cycle. They have more heart disease. They have more cancer. They don't do as well with this and that. So understanding these observations that I had were pretty powerful. It sculpted my the dynamic of what I wanted to do. And I became a trauma and spine surgeon with the intention of working at the Cook County Hospital in Chicago, which was predominantly a hospital that served ethnic minorities in the Chicago area. And I did that for a decade after I completed my training. But a lot of that was driven by the powerful imagery and experiences that I had working with these blues musicians.
When you decided to go back to school full time after the 6-year hiatus, what was that like for you? And how many years did you have to go back to complete your medical studies?
Well, I did 1.5 years when I went back. I had to complete my clinical work. And I was actually ready to quit when I was done with my clinical work because I love Northwestern. It's a phenomenal school and hospital. But most of what I was seeing over there was well-to-do Gold Coast residents of Chicago. And as a student, I got to do very little. Most any student, we pushed the wall up and observed. And it wasn't until my final rotation where I got to go to Cook County, and for 30 days, I didn't have to wear a tie. I didn't have to wear a suit. I wore scrubs and was in the trenches, like rocking and rolling. And I said, this is incredible. And I want to be here. So I asked to have my internship be at Cook County Hospital for 365 days. I was on call every other day. I think 8 of the residents quit. I just thought it was the most amazing. It was in 1995. It was the hottest summer. There were hundreds of people. 800 people died of heat. They overwhelmed the morgue. There were 18-wheel refrigerated trucks circling county with bodies waiting for the coroner to evaluate them. Trauma was through the roof, gunshots. I was totally in my element. I mean, it was like people hated it there. All my fellow residents were like begging and bribing other residents to not go. And I was there the whole year because I just thought it was amazing. I helped thousands of people. I did all these things, and I said, I could see doing this for my life. You know, it was we're all attracted to different things. Trauma, just something that I couldn't get enough of, and it was just amazing. And spine trauma and general trauma, we had. I mean, it was hard, it was intense, but never did I have a day that was like the day before. I mean, I couldn't be the kind of doctor that every day came in, okay, today we're going to do 3 knee scopes. Tomorrow we're going to do 3 more knee scopes. I would slip my wrists, man. I mean, I like puzzles. I like challenges, and every day not knowing what hand was going to be dealt to you. That's all I wanted.
When do you know that you're a good doctor, that you can deal with all those situations? How does that happen?
You don't know. I mean, every day you're on a high wire, riding a unicycle with a bamboo stick with 2 women on each end of the stick and a monkey sitting on their hat with a bucket of turds, throwing them at you, trying to get you to fall off the high wire, man. You have no idea. It's that's the challenge, and it's the survival. I mean, you don't know if you're good. At the end of the day, all that matters is that your patient survives and they like you for your effort. I have tens of thousands of patients. I don't know if I'm a good, bad, or indifferent doctor, but I know I've got tens of thousands of patients who follow me everywhere. Like there's no other doctor they want but me, because they say I hear them. They say I see them. They say I get them. So I don't know how you discern if it's good. I mean, obviously, the outcomes are exceptional. I mean, in these minority populations, the expected outcome is in the bottom 15%. Ours are in the 90+%. So we're doing something right. But you never think, are you good or bad? You think, am I connected to these patients? Because whether I do a good or a bad job, if they don't listen to what I tell them to do, it's going to fall apart. I have to have buy-in. I have to have connection. I spent a lot of time educating my patients to understand what their role is in all of this. I mean, over 70% of my patients, when I sit down with them in an office setting, turn on my computer, show them their x-rays, review surgeries and all this, they go, doc, nobody's ever talked to me like this before. Isn't that tragic?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like once they feel that I'm treating them as an equal, instead of like, here I am, this mighty doctor, and here you are, this, terrible, poor patient. How are you not going to feel like shit, right? I treat them as equals. I give them all my cell phone. They can text me whenever they need me, and they don't abuse it. And I think that makes you a good doctor when you have a laundry list of patients that have come with very complex issues that you help transform their lives and gotten them back to their state where they're functional and they're happy, and that you've established a connection and developed a relationship where you are trusted. I mean, I got to ask myself all the time, how the hell did a 6'11" Croatian immigrant end up with one of the largest minority medical practices in the country? I mean, the Black community, I think in general, minority communities tend to be a little bit distrusting because they know how they get treated. But once you're the guy and they decide that you're the dude, you're the dude. So, I get patients that will come in and they will ask me to do their uncle's open heart surgery. And I'm like, but I'm not a heart surgeon. They go, but we don't trust anybody but you. And so it's just one of those type of things where part of being a doctor is different than becoming a healer.
I would imagine that finishing your medical school studies would be quite intense. Was music still a big part of that during those years?
Absolutely. I can't tell you how many times security came up to my dorm to turn my guitar down. Yes, but the crazy thing was that the medical campus for Northwestern was downtown, and it was 2 blocks away from the radio station I worked at. So it was and the recording studio that I worked at as an engineer was 2 blocks in the other direction. So it was kind of cool. The minute I'd get done with lecture or lab, I'd go run across to Universal Recording, or I'd go run down to WCKG, the radio station. And, you know, I was fortunate that all these things just magically happened for me. I didn't predict them. I didn't anticipate them, but, and LC Thurman, my conduit to the blues, when I graduated from undergrad, he got promoted to run the medical labs at the medical school, the animal labs at the medical school. He was in charge. So he was connected to me my whole way through. He was like my guide. This is like kind of ridiculous.
It's crazy.
Yeah. But I couldn't have sat down with a bag of weed and a bottle of hooch and come up with a strategy better than that. I mean, it just, the way it unfolded, very crazy. So even when I was in school, these things were made available to me, and they stayed in my life and they stayed connected. So it was almost like whatever force was guiding it said that you need to be here. You can't not have music in your existence.
So what is it about you think, and your musical abilities that attracted these legendary musicians for you to work with Otis Rush?
I had no business playing with Otis Rush. I had no business playing with Buddy Guy. I had no business playing with Junior and any of these guys. I had no business being on a stage with them at the point of my career. I didn't have any impressive resume. I didn't have, what I had was they liked me, they trusted me, they thought I was a good guy, and that I learned quickly. I was just some young punk ass 22, 23-year-old. You know, what did I bring to the table, right? There was nothing, but I was immersed. I was into it. And they were my senseis. They were my mentors. And, you know, pretty much I availed myself to them because I was deferential and respectful of what they were giving me. I didn't do drugs. At no point did I ever fall out on stage, you know, and I didn't pass out in the dressing room with a needle in my arm. You know, I was reliable. And I think at that stage of my career, maybe they saw the potential in me. I have no idea. I don't know. But there was absolutely no reason I should have been playing on stage with these guys, being in their band, but there was obviously a reason why I was in their lives. There's obviously a reason why I connected with them. Killer Ray Allison, 20 years later, I mean, we stayed friends from when I was young, but 20 years later, we formed a band together.
And this is the Chicago Blues All-Stars.
That was out of those connections and those relationships where, and I didn't even know, like when Killer, he was the premier drummer. He was the drummer. I mean, he was the guy. I had no idea when I called him that he quit drumming. I said, Killer, let's get together and jam. And, you know, let's try and figure out how to put this band together. We spent hours on the phone kind of brainstorming. And we showed up to the Checkerboard Lounge to rehearse. LC let us use the club for rehearsal. And he showed up with a guitar and an amp. I'm like, where the fuck are your drums? He goes, oh shit, man, I quit playing drums, man. Fuck drums. I don't want to do it anymore. Like, what do you mean? You're the best fucking drummer in the world and you just fucking ain't playing drums? Are you crazy? He goes, no, man, I just don't feel like it anymore. I'm like, well, fuck, okay. You're a guitar player. I'm a guitar player. Let's play. But I had no idea. But that's how this stuff works. And I guess he couldn't get any gigs because nobody would accept him as a guitar player. They would only accept him as a drummer. And he didn't, you know, in his mind said, I want to sing and I want to play guitar. And I said, absolutely, man. I think that's a great idea. I just didn't know. And I said, so he did a couple of the rehearsals. He brought his drum kit, and he got this crazy leopard skin drum kit that he brought. And Elsie said, what the hell's Killer doing with his drums? I go, because he's the best fucking drummer in the world. Why wouldn't he have his drums? He goes, man, Killer don't play drums with nobody these days. I go, he goes, he must be your brother, man. I said, you know, I mean, I just asked him and he did it, you know, but I think it's just a matter of timing on that. But Killer and I came from a place where maybe he wasn't being accepted because he was a guitar player now, and everyone wanted to accept him as a drummer. And I wanted to be accepted as a musician, and people were only kind of associating me with being a doctor, you know? And I think, you know, in this life, we write the script and what we choose to be, but that doesn't mean that everybody will accept it. But since we came together and we kind of fed off each other's energy and created a really cool entity, people did accept us. But, you know, it's just a tricky, everything's about timing, and everything is about your past feeding into your present and your future. I couldn't have known that years before that Ray and I would be in a band. I couldn't have known that, you know, couldn't have known that Lefty Diz and I would have gotten together on some advertising murals and music when I was working with advertisers on the radio side. I mean, you draw on your connections, and all these sort of tangential points led me back to this one night of walking into the checkerboard, not having a clue at all about playing, and being accepted by a bunch of people that didn't judge me for not being a great guitar player. They didn't judge me for being white. They didn't judge me for being anything other than they liked me. They thought I was a good guy. And I think in all these pieces, the common thread was that I think people don't acknowledge how accepting the blues community has been historically. And I believe that because many of them were neglected, disrespected by the mainstream, they were much more open-minded because they must know how it felt. Magic Slim knew what it was like to be rejected. These guys knew what it was like to be Black in a city that, you know, they were superstars in Europe, and they were just a bunch of Black guys on the South Side in Chicago. No one in Chicago cared about them. So I think their experiences and mine led to a sort of symbiosis, a synergy, where we were both feeling similar energies in maybe different planes, but it led to acceptance and respect of each other. And so they continued to pop back in my life, as did I in theirs. And to me, all points on the map musical always leads back to that night at the Checkerboard Lounge. I mean, if you draw up like a family tree, it's pretty powerful.
Well, it's interesting because there's this thing that just throughout your life, it just seems like things happened, which kind of built on other things happening. I mean, maybe it's true for many people, but I presume the work that you do with the One Patient Global Health Initiative has something to do with your relationship to the blues. And you know what I mean? Like, you're still building on that. The work that you do with blues musicians in healthcare. I mean, this is all interconnected, or that's what it seems like from my point of view.
Yeah, I mean, it's connected. Everything's connected. And I think the way it works is that you do something, you take it as far as it can go, and you still believe in that one thing. And then maybe you come back to that one thing at a different point in your life where you have more emphasis, you have more juice, you have more power to take it even further. So whereas before it was me just taking a handful of musicians to a clinic to get them medication and get them a doctor, now it was, you know, during COVID, musicians couldn't work. They didn't have money. What money they had to determine whether they were going to pay rent and food, or they were going to pay insurance and pay medicine. It's a simple decision. You got to live, you got to eat. So their medicine and their medical health was being neglected. And was, again, 40 years ago, I didn't have telehealth. I didn't have the internet. I didn't have Zoom. I didn't have FaceTime. So I was able to leverage my desire to make an impact for blues musicians during a pandemic by being a doctor and leveraging the digital resources at my fingertips to touch 200 plus musicians instead of just 5. But the same energy and the same desire to make a positive impact on these blues musicians who helped my life in such profound ways, I was able to do it on a broader scale, having more knowledge, having more experience, having more assets, and having more resources. So my beliefs have always fundamentally been the same. I just think I'm at a point in my life where I can do bigger and better things for these communities that I've been intending to help from the get-go.
At the same time, you're releasing a new album with the Chicago Blues All-Stars, Red Hot and Blue. How do you prioritize your time, and then how do you manage promoting the band when you have such a busy medical life?
It's really hard, but what's happened, I've had to lead parallel lives. I've had to be the doctor, I've had to be the musician, I've had to be the media guy, the media personality. And at some point, everything became one. So now, Dr. Dan, Chicago Slim, the blues doctor, period. I mean, I'm not diminished by musicians by saying, oh yeah, he's a doctor. No, I'm a blues doctor. They know who I am and what I do. I've been able to establish my process to where I dress in my clinic cool enough to where I can leave my clinic and go on any bandstand and still look cool. My outfits transcend. I don't have to leave. I never wear a suit. I wear cool scrubs that are all initialized and customized for me. So if I decide to take off my surgical cap and throw on a Kangol, I can put on a guitar and still look good. And people aren't going to go, oh my God, that's a doctor on stage. It looks cool. And I think the point is that I got sick and tired of having to try and somehow be a doctor for my medical community and be a musician for my musician community. When it got to the point where I'd be in clinic, and with the internet, once again, my musicians would go, oh my God, doc, I watched your video, man. You are one bad blah, blah, blah on guitar. And I just realized that it's all connected. It doesn't matter. I'm me. I do all these things, and that's all happening under this brain, under this body. And so I've kind of morphed it all into just one being, one set of skills that happen to be medical, musical, and radio. And people have accepted me for that. So from a time standpoint, it's all one or the other. So I'll be in the middle of a clinic. I get a text from the manager buddy guy saying, hey, you want to do a date? I say, sure. What date? I mean, it's now a text instead of, I don't have to have my manager call them or my booking agent. They call me. And so, trying to kind of streamline and simplify it. I think I'm at the point in my life where it does work really easily and simple, and it's almost like effortless. I don't have to work to do this. I just have to be, and I have to be available. And so the next step is going to be very interesting, because in the context of one patient, I've had the Chicago Blues Society for 20 years now. And during the pandemic, we actually spun it off from one patient, because Chicago Blues Society was intended, you promote the blues culture, but our mission was primarily on preserving the health and wellness of musicians, keeping the blues musicians alive. I mean, I hate to say it. I hate that. I hate the terminology, keeping the blues alive. What the hell does that mean, keeping the blues alive? To me, you can't have blues without blues musicians, right? And so for me, we're into keeping blues musicians alive. And additionally, I work very closely with Fernando Jones, who has an incredible program called Blues Kids. You'd love talking to him, but he provides mentorship, teaching, of blues to kids all over the world. And we're going to be working together, hopefully in the next year. But we have a facility that we've located, and we're gonna be there, and it's going to be pretty wild and crazy. But I think we're going to be able to put all these components under one roof. So Chicago Blues Society is now 501c3 not-for-profit, as is one patient. And then we have other non-for-profits we work in synergy with to establish sort of this greater footprint of, health and wellness, at-risk youth. I mean, this is Chicago. I mean, so many children are in the balance. And I think Fernando and I and many other people that are going to come together now, I think we'll be able to extend our reach to where we can help thousands of kids in the city and thousands of musicians under that one. We're not just relegating it to blues. During COVID, I helped country, rock, heavy metal, industrial, house musicians. And we opened up our panel to any musician that wants to live a healthier life. And so it's interesting how it all comes together. But I think I'm very excited about the prospects for the future. And I do see that my life is seamless. Your question was, how do you do all these things and have time? They're all one now.
Tell me about in 2015 when you got recognized by CNN as one of the top heroes. What did that mean to you?
I'm very thankful. I'm very honored. It was really cool to be introduced by Common, who I have known since he sort of was an emerging artist in Chicago. But I'm very uncomfortable with these quote unquote hero awards. Honestly, I'm just doing my job. I'm doing what I was trained to do as a physician, as a healer. I took an oath. I take that oath very seriously. The Hippocratic Oath is not something that I take lightly. And so it's a little bit humbling to have an award of that magnitude, but at the same time, I shake my head and saying, this is what every doctor should be doing.
What's the state of Chicago blues today? How do you view that? Because you've come from a time when you learned from the greats and the legendary players. Tell me about Chicago blues today and going forward. How do you view it?
I think it's in a precarious state right now because the city of Chicago really, it's a typical governmental monolith. They don't really do anything particularly well or efficiently on behalf of the culture. And sort of when the blues evolved, it did it in its own incubator. I don't feel there's enough young talent being developed in the marketplace. It's getting older and it's getting sort of the same old, same old. There's not anything exciting and challenging coming out. I mean, we certainly have some great talents that are in the marketplace, but I worry more about what's going to happen in 10 to 15 years. During the pandemic, we lost a couple of major clubs. I'm hoping to correct some of that by having a club at the new facility. That's my hope. But, working with Fernando Jones, that's been part of our ongoing discussion is from our standpoint, what are we doing to preserve the culture of Chicago blues, the electrified version that inspired the world? And how do we get younger people, Black, white, brown, male, female, to want to participate? I mean, it's so much harder now. Back in the 50s and 60s, blues and R&B, that was the predominant form in Black music. Now you're competing with hip hop, with rap, and how can we inspire kids to bring their interest in that over to blues and maybe make it new, fresh? I'm not a believer in keeping it old and dated. I believe, to me, when they go, well, that's not real blues. Well, blues in its heyday was scoffed at. I mean, Black music has always sort of had an edge to it. Blues music was the state of the art, the electrified Muddy Water stuff in the 50s and 60s. That's what Black people were listening to. I mean, my wife and I, Dr. Carla, we were the only white media personalities on WVON. Purvis Spann was one of my idols. WVON was the voice of the Negro. That was Chess Records. That they had 3 million listeners, and that's what they were playing blues. They were playing Muddy. They were playing Elmore James. They were playing Little Walter to this audience. That was the state of the art in the 50s and 60s. The problem with the blues is people want to stay bogged down in what was happening 7 decades ago. And Black music has evolved so profoundly. And I consider rap and hip hop in many ways the good rap and hip hop that has a message. If you listen to the lyrics and not get absorbed in the music, it's a reflection of the state of Black culture today. And there's some great guys like Twista and Chance the Rapper who's here. They're not talking about misogynist nonsense. They're actually talking about life and reality. And so I think when we talk about blues, I think it's finding a path to bridge the tradition with the here and now and getting young people to be excited by it. I mean, when I was in high school, all my Black friends from basketball, they wanted nothing to do with the blues. And then I would take them to a club and they go, oh man, this is awesome. Or we go down to Maxwell Street and they thought it was the most amazing thing to go to the open air market, buy some 8-tracks, because there was an element of fun, an element of, kind of like why I got off on the Checkerboard Lounge. Like, well, the experience was amazing. So we have to figure out a way to just get younger people excited, like jam bands. There's so many blues bands now that are playing on the jam band circuit, and jam band fans are digging the blues. So we just have to find a way to bridge this uniquely American form. Gospel, country, and blues, they're true Americana music. And how do we get young people to dig the blues? I think that is the $1 million question, but that's a big priority for Fernando and me.
Well, Dr. Dan, I got to wrap this up, but I want to thank you for this. You're doing some amazing work, and for people who don't know about what you're doing, they should go to your website, chicagoslim.com, and find out about all the different things you're involved in. Let me ask you one final question. Tell me if you can quantify what blues has given you.
Wow. What blues has given me a new lease on life. It's given me confidence. It's given me the insight into all people. And it's given me an ability to connect with people on a level that I never would have had without it. And for that, I'm eternally grateful.
Thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you.